Hello and welcome to the Identity Podcast. It is such an honor to always be here. Once again, I am Caleb, one of your co-hosts for the Identity Podcast, and I think this is going to be a phenomenal show. I tell you, episode 35. Can you believe it? Episode 35. We've gone so far. We've come so far. It's been incredible. Don't forget that it is now April 7th to be exact. We're so excited to be here live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch at Find Your ID and Identity Podcast. Don't forget to go ahead and check out our podcast, available on all streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you love the Identity Podcast, don't forget you can sponsor us. Email us at press@findyouridnyc.com. And don't forget, we are presented by findyouridnyc.com. It's such a great time to be here. I feel like it's been a long time since we've been here, but it's only been a week. Well, I'm grateful to be back. It's great. And I'm excited to introduce our guest for this week's show as we continue our environmentalism series here in April, and we get ready for a big Earth Day special that we have around Earth Day. Very excited for that. But first, let's go ahead and introduce our guest for this week's show, eco-influencer featuring Gill Perkins. Hello, Gill. How are you?
Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's truly an honor, and I'm very excited to be able to begin today's show and to be able to talk about you and everything that you do, because just you sending us kind of what you do and learning more about you and everything leading up to the show, I'm quite fascinated, to be honest. I'm really interested to kind of see what more of eco-influencer means and what you do with it, and kind of where you hope to go with it as well. But I guess as we kind of start, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, so I've been blogging for probably about 10 years, a little bit over that. And I've always been interested in environmentalism and just trying to be green and make green choices where I can. That's kind of come from my childhood, really. My mum was always into that sort of thing as well. And I just gradually was trying to find my niche, which is obviously in the influencer space. That's a great thing to try and do when you're trying to build your brand. It sort of gradually started coming together, because once I started product testing and stuff like that, then I started seeking out products which, you know, really spoke to me and what I was about, and trying to go for stuff which was aspirational to my life, which to me is going for as green as possible stuff and natural stuff as much as possible. So that kind of was the start of this journey. And then over the course of the pandemic, one of the really great things to come out of it was the opportunity to meet with people, mainly through Instagram, to be honest, who are part of this eco community, which is just building and building. And I just found I had a lot in common with them. And it's just through sort of meetups and community events which happen on Instagram, I just became part of that community. And I guess it kind of organically grew into my niche. Also had my own challenges, because the other side of my brand is kind of like wellness and well-being and mental health and all that as well. I'm very interested in that, and I've had my own journey with insomnia and postnatal depression and everything like that, and going through that and trying to find the most natural route out of that. Very pro the self-care movement and personal development space as well. So it all kind of links in together, and I kind of feel like I'm now at a space where I know that's my niche, and it's like a nice enough rounded niche that it can grow with me. But I just get to work with like awesome people and meet awesome people like yourself from all over the world. So yeah, I'm just really excited about where my brand's going.
That's great. And I love that. And I think as we were kind of talking before the show, you know, we both understand kind of repping your brand and getting your brand ready and constantly posting about it and putting it out there and talking about it. You know, I feel like that's all I do anymore. But it's a very big thing and very important when creating and really growing your brand, establishing your brand, I think is a great way to put it. But I really love that what you had to say there, kind of your journey leading up to where you are today and everything, and with kind of this eco-influencer journey that you've been able to take and everything. Where has it kind of led you during the pandemic?
I guess it's given me a space to find community, which has become a very important aspect of my brand, and it's something which I definitely want to develop further. I've last year started my blog on YouTube, and I've in the last month now migrated into a podcast as well. And I love the idea of just interviewing and talking and learning from interesting people, and that kind of came from me being a consumer of those things. I probably got into listening to podcasts at the beginning of last year, and I've just got so much out of that as a medium, personally, and I just love like that whole thing of learning through that method. That's very much my learning style, is listening to interesting people talk about these things, and I just think I can develop that kind of content too, really.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great mindset to have. And to be honest, I felt the same way, with podcasting. It's like I have this ability to create something and put my voice out there and everything. And I've done the same with blogs and everything. But when kind of creating the blog and everything, did you initially expect to then create a podcast?
No, I think it's kind of all like grown organically, really. But what I find really interesting, and I've said this before, is, I'm now in my late 30s. If you were to flash back in time to when I was 16, what I actually wanted to be was a TV presenter. And I was doing a media production broadcasting, BTEC, as it's called in the UK, which is like something you do before university. And then I went on to do a media degree, and that was what I wanted to do. But at that point in time, it's just really interesting how, when you look back on your life, things pan out, because at that point in time, if you wanted to do that and pursue that, you basically needed to work in London on a tiny salary, but the cost of living in London is phenomenal. And it really wasn't realistic, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go on the commuter train at stupid o'clock in the morning and be packed in with everyone. Like, that's my worst nightmare. If someone had sat down with 16-year-old me and said, right, this is actually the reality of your dream, then I probably would have gone, well, sod that, I'm not going to do that then. But actually what's funny is, like, jump forward whatever, God, scare myself now, 20 plus years, and we now have the opportunity to create our own one and our own brand, and I'm like, well, this is kind of cool, because my dream is kind of coming into fruition in a way which I never thought it would. But I kind of feel like, well, maybe this could develop, and maybe I could become a YouTuber and an influencer, and still get my voice out there, but on my own terms, in my own way, as a freelancer. And actually, that's actually cooler than my original dream. So, yeah. Sorry.
No, not at all. But no,
Yeah.
and I think.
Sorry, bear with me 2 seconds.
No worries at all. But here we are for the Identity Podcast, and it's a great thing hearing what Gill has to say, and I think I completely agree with you there. We're at a state now where we look at our past dreams, and then we look at these where we're at now, right? And this is like our current dreams and our future dreams, and looking back at everything, and it's like, wow, I can't believe I had that dream, when now I'm like living the dream. And it's absolutely, I think it's just amazing and beautiful to know that we have this ability to do these things, because, as you said, being able to have a blog and a podcast and constantly repping your brand and putting your brand out there, establishing it, I think is something that's just so cool. I mean, it's kind of cool to be able to go onto your email, and then you get an email saying, hey, I love the show, I would love to check out more. I'd love to be on the show or anything like that. It's really
Exactly.
cool to know that people just across the globe are finding something that you never thought you'd make an influence on, or you really never
Yeah.
thought could grow in a way that it has grown, right? And
Yeah.
kind of, and I think what I'm hearing from you is very much that same mindset that Tarik and
Mhm.
myself have had as well, and I think that's really great. And speaking of Tarik, my co-host is on the show.
Hello.
Hey everyone, hello, hello, hello. How are you? Can you hear me?
Nice to meet you. Yes,
You're
I
good.
can.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, this is just great. I'm just tuning in and checking in. I'll forward my questions. Here on the East Coast, it's a little after originally the time that we're gonna say, but we're here. So
Yeah.
my apologies. So
That's okay. No
No,
worries.
we're all good. I
yeah,
think we had a time miscommunication in general, so no worries.
indeed,
But we're
indeed.
here.
Yeah.
But we were here, and we're grateful to have you, Tarik. But as we continue here on the show, definitely, I feel that. Kind of talking more about this eco influencer, what you do and everything, kind of for a more overall perspective, how do you define an eco influencer?
I guess it's someone who, I guess, to people who have no clue about this whole influencer space or the different platforms, I kind of talk about my blog as the equivalent of a magazine, and someone would like who wanted to promote a product which they were trying to market. They would then kind of talk to me, and then my blog and my various platforms would then be the medium which they would communicate that through. I think the whole interesting thing is that I can say how it works in my life and give them a real like taste of, okay, so I'm using this product, and really talk about it and how it's used, and that just gives it more like of a relatable thing than say traditional TV advertising or something like that. It's and this is the interesting thing to compare, like what we were talking about of the dream of getting into broadcasting, say, versus the influencer space, because I feel like it's far more personal, far more relatable, far more community based, and that's what's exciting about it, because like I have no desire to be a celebrity. I don't want like that life at all. But I love the idea of connecting with interesting people from all over the world who are all like trying to fight for a cause which is important. And I'm a great believer of like everyone doing a little bit towards environmentalism is like the way forward, because I think I've always referred to myself as being like a realistic green person, because life is challenging. All these products at the moment cost a lot of money, so I'm all about like finding ways to do it in a cheaper, more thrifty way as well, but ultimately you can be doing that on the one hand, but by marketing it and building up these little cottage industry brands, then you are working towards making green mainstream, which is what the ultimate goal is. So, because as soon as it becomes mainstream, then the prices will come down and it will be available to the masses.
Right. Yeah, a bit of a domino effect of sorts. You tackle
Absolutely.
you tackle the problem at hand, and then everything tends to kind of roll out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has such a better connotation, Caleb, than an actual social influencer, right? How many trees have they helped off the name alone? I love the acronym itself, the fact that it is an eco influencer. Ultimately,
Yeah.
what we're trying to get is having our smaller impacts obviously make a much larger impact, especially when it comes to waste management or whatever it may be that they're into. So I think it's very awesome to see that there is a possibility to just be who we are, but also
Mm-hmm.
attack the problems at hand with a small significance, record some of that information and then use it as a PSA for others. Like
Absolutely.
That's exactly what we need to be doing.
And I think what's so interesting is a lot of the things which come out in this space, in this community, are actually going back to old school ways of doing things, like what your grandparents would do, just through trying to be thrifty. Using, for example, like if I cook a roast chicken, then I would cook a whole roast chicken, and then I'd use like the leftover meat, and then I'd make soup out of the bones, and just like old school things like that. That's being thrifty. That's like valuing the meat which I've got, and just kind of like one of my big things is like conscious consumerism. Right. So I'm just trying to fight against like mindless consumerism, and I feel like there's a lot of the world who don't think before they buy. They're just like, oh, I need this, so I buy it, so I buy it, so I buy it. And I'm just trying to like, and this is where it kind of comes in with this whole meditative space and mindfulness space as well, is like actually pausing and going, oh, but do I need that? And that's quite an old school concept, and it quite often comes from trying to be thrifty and stuff as well. Like they say, like an old school way of buying something was to write yourself a list of the things which you wanted that month, and if you still feel like you need it 1 month later, then you buy it. And it's just kind of trying to slow things down. And I think that's part of this whole movement. You've got like the slow food movement, you've got the slow fashion movement. It's just trying to like get people to go, right, you don't need to go that fast. I think that's like part of it as well, really.
Yeah, a major part of it, I would say. Yeah. You mentioned the speed of production and the way we sell. I know I'm a heavy thrifter. I'm sure Caleb is as well. I love the idea of it, And I think for me, when I first got into thrifting, it definitely was much more of a fashionable thing. And that kind of goes to the same idea of what you were saying earlier, by creating the paradigm, almost like this bubble around what we're doing via, social media influencing, or actually, if you're taking that brand and becoming that buffer or that voice of reason, like, please don't use this product at all, or, obviously move forward with it. And so your name becomes trusted. And that's what I really enjoy about what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, like, just the many jars and the many hats that you fill. It's just, I love that part about it. Just opening up to so many different industries and so many different people. Like, it puts in such perspective about like what we're really doing and like what that really means. I often I know that when we're on the show, we have like, these larger tasks at hand that need to get done, and then we have guests like you that are just like, here's what I'm doing, and I'm just like, wow, why didn't I think of that? But it's so beautiful that you're able to open yourself up to other people to also use your platform for themselves. And I think that's how you're going to actually start to change the paradigm, because like you said, you go to Instagram off of rip, it may not exactly tell you exactly how much you saved that day, or it's going to trend products that are naturally more consumerism or fast fashion. So I
think that's what's so exciting.
Say it again.
Sorry, I was just saying, like, this whole thing, which is exciting about it, is it's kind of coming from the ground up as well. And there's a lot of people who, like, oftentimes it's quite often, it's actually so refreshing to talk to two men about environmentalism, because there is like this whole side movement of like, where's all the men?
Really?
Yeah, which is really interesting. And there's a couple of like male eco influencers who actually run specific like male eco meetups, because there's so few out there, and it's a shame, and I hope that isn't the case. But I guess as a mother as well, you start to think about things once you become a parent, and you think about, actually what kind of earth do I want to leave behind for my kids as well. And I guess all these things kind of become more to the forefront of your mind. Like, you were maybe a little bit more, for me, it was like maybe a little bit idealistic beforehand, and now you get into like the practical space of like, how can I do these things? And also like wanting, there's several people who I follow who are like private tutors or create kids materials and stuff like that, and that's really interesting as well. So like actually teaching kids to love nature, teaching kids to actually love like the plants and the birds and the trees and that. I was very lucky. My mum was really like on it with that sort of stuff in my childhood. But that isn't necessarily the norm, and they don't necessarily learn about those things in school. Equally so, learning how to cook from scratch and learn like to use fresh ingredients rather than like all the manufactured stuff. And it's all part of it, and that's what
Right.
I get so excited about this space as a whole. Is it? I feel like it literally encompasses everything which I care about. So I can kind of go off, I guess, on tangents in different ways. And I still feel like I'm speaking to the right people, to the right space. So it's great.
That is great. I mean, Caleb, that's kind of like where we're trying to go. I'm definitely inspired by that route for sure. It's almost like creating a platform for other people to have their own platform. In that moment, you're actually creating a safe space or some sort of haven for information, or whatever it may be. And you think about organizations like PETA or these other ones that have kind of, like you said, started from the ground. And they've grown so significantly up until the point that like they're featured in movies and TV and all this stuff.
Sure.
It starts to become a cultural thing. So yeah, who knows what the future may behold, but because you started, you have opened up a whole door. So that's when we opened up this first podcast in August. It kind of was like, yeah, like this is everything that we love. Caleb and I can literally talk about anything sometimes. Not to say we're experts on everything, but we have a lot of
opinions.
We have a lot of interests and a lot of opinions. And I think the best way for us, because Caleb and I have often talked about this, like how do we really tackle this much, bigger behemoth of doing change or doing good? Caleb loves environmentalism as much as I am. We're definitely both vegan and a bunch of other ways. So we've used this as our platform to kind of get our voice out. But to create an entire cultural influences, that's just like exactly what we need to get into everyone's hands.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's definitely. Oh, sorry, Tarik.
No, it's in and out. Sorry, man.
It's definitely a journey, right? And that's exactly, that's why we love to open up with your journey and talk about your journey and everything, because no matter what, it is a journey. Life is a journey, and we're constantly on this cycle. And as Tarik was mentioning, creating a podcast and creating this bigger entity as we're trying to right now for the podcast, and as you are doing right now, it can be difficult, but it really can be amazing as well. And to know that you are able to reach this higher entity, have this higher power or something, is truly amazing. And I think it really allows you to continue to grow, right? Continue to develop and figure out your brand and where you're going from there and everything. And I think that's really important. And I think that's something that we found on the podcast, is being able to find that. As you mentioned earlier, Gill, kind of that niche, right? Being able to find what you're good at, what you do, what your brand stands for, and to be able to run with it. And to be able to have you on the show, I think is a great reminder for Tarik and myself as well, and even all of our fans and subscribers and listeners for the podcast, that we can constantly achieve our dreams. We can go for it. We can do things, and we're constantly growing our brand as well. I think it's a great reminder, and I think it's I really, something that I've loved thus far in the show is I've really admired your humbleness, right? Being very humble. I really admire that. I think that's a great trait to have, and I think that's a great trait to pass on to other people as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I was just like trying to remember the quote, and I want to say it was Richard Branson who came out with this quote, but it's just, do what you love and you'll be good at it. And I think that's the thing which I'm kind of getting into this space and this entrepreneurial space, and it's so exciting because if you literally you know what your heart desires, you know what you want to put out into the universe, and it just like, if you keep doing that, then you know it will work. It's just like, if you try and force yourself to conform to something which isn't right for you, isn't right for your soul, then it's not going to work, and it's going to crush you. And I think that comes into the whole holistic space. And you know, the more I get into it, the more I believe in it and I understand it. You know, I just, yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's such a great point. You know, not to make such a pun, but it wouldn't be the Identity Podcast if I want. But once everything became apparent that you were a parent, I think that you found ways to find parts of your life that you can share with others. And I think that's my favorite part about this whole podcast so far. I mean, today's episode, it's just like, you're like, well, this is something I like. This is something I'm doing. Why don't I just tell people about it? You know, and it seems so simple, but you'd be surprised how much confidence that is. Even in the holistic spaces, like there's retreats, you know, there's yogi instructors, there's toxic waste management. But a lot of these worlds are kind of like have this delineation where it's like, okay, I kind of do this or I kind of do that, or, you know, but never just a space where we're like, okay, we're all consciously trying to do something. You may not have all the resources, whatever it is.
And it's focusing on people, actually, all the good that people are doing. I think, you know, a lot of the time, and this is kind of the dangerous space, is that brands, like the really big brands, are blaming the consumers. And you're like, hang on, hold up. Wait. Hang on, let's look at what the actual options are for people who go to supermarkets, and let's actually look at what's affordable, and let's actually take the guilt away from the consumer, because hang on, wait, you're a multinational company and or you're like a government, and how much money have you got? And you could actually make these choices. I can see you're making these choices on making tax cuts on cigarettes, you know, so hang on, surely you could make tax cuts on these eco products. And I just feel like if all the influencers kind of gather together and really kind of push this message, you know, come on guys, do better. And that's, you know, I'm not trying to be passive aggressive with it, it's just like, but what I love now is when I post something like that, then I get, you know, all my tribe come on and like, yeah, sure. I mean, I'll give you for an example. One of the big brand supermarkets who I shop at every week. So I wrote to them, and I don't know if it was my email, which made any difference, but like one of my big bugbears in terms of packaging is like all citrus fruit come in these like netted bags, which not only are the bags made of plastic, so they're not recyclable. If they go to a landfill site, then like small animals get caught up in them as well. So they're just bad news all overall. And I bought some stuff from an eco place, and they had bags made of string, so at least they were biodegradable. So I suggested, right, that's one option. But also, a lot of the other supermarkets had started making selling clementines in cardboard boxes, which is just such a simple solution, and they can easily go in a small cardboard box. And so and literally the next week I went on to order my online shop, and there was a cardboard box option available, but then the week after that it arrived and it was a cardboard box wrapped in plastic, and I just kind of like photographed it and just put it on my Instagram, and I was just like, really? Like last week it was just a cardboard box. Why does it have plastic around it this week? What is the actual point? And it kind of made me chuckle, because like one of my tribe like commented and said, yeah, because it's not like clementines have their own natural skin to protect them from the outside world anyway. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, come on. And I just think we do need to, you know, in a kind of nurturing, mothering way, just be like, guys, come on. And that's what I'm about. You know, I'm not about, you know, there are people who take it to a ridiculous negative space where they're constantly ranting about this and that. But it's just like when you see these little things, you just kind of go, hey, you know, tag the supermarket. You can do better here. Please try better. Or, you know, it's just doing it in that way. And that's what I try and do. So I'm not trying to get political. That's the last thing I want to do. You know, I don't want to get like be one of those people at all. But it's just trying to get your message across. And I think if you people then relate more to that, because then they look at like, oh, okay, like why do we need this? And they start questioning things in their life as well, and that's where you get into this conscious consumerism.
Oof, that's the full circle stuff right there.
Yeah, sorry, a little bit of
no, it's good stuff. It's funny because I was gonna ask the question. I'm like, you know, as far as you're concerned, like what are the methods, or where would you go with what you're doing? You know, just even in your example, you sending that letter to a much more bigger institution is like, that matters. You know, that definitely matters. It obviously made a change. Regardless how significant it was, it made some sort of change. And I think you're hitting this problem where the head is, in the sense of that each one of us have an opportunity to make a different decision, to shop at that place. Like, that's the real power. We obviously can go, I live in New York City, and in New York City, we basically banned plastic bags altogether. And I grew up with that for a long time. So that's definitely like a huge significance, where we don't see plastic bags like tumbling through our streets all the time.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm sure they're doing other subversive stuff that are like, we got rid of the plastic, now we have to get rid of some other plastic somewhere else, you know. So I get it, and I definitely understand. But you know, from a much more political agenda, you'd be surprised how much you know grassroots operations, such as getting all the people involved to just move forward, have just as much power as someone that's attaching themselves to a tree, or you know, making some dramatic political statement. It's a lifestyle change, and that's why I said I really enjoy what you're saying, because information and ultimately choice is how this is going to be changed. Providing people information to know, like, hey, look, there is actually an option to make a difference. I think a lot of people just don't feel like they have. For you to create a space where people can see that tangibly, like, oh my God, look at what Gill did. You know, like that just means a lot. You know, especially
that's why I hope. That's why I really hope that happens. And what's really interesting, what you're saying about, you know, the example of the typical like green hippie tying themselves to a tree hugging and all that sort of thing. It's part of like making it all more mainstream, is having these like down to earth conversations about, okay, hey, I can't do this, but I can do this. And that's what I try and promote in my own life, and just promoting things like, oh, you know, what my eco swap of the month has been, and just like, oh, I have a little bit extra in my bank account, so hey, I'm going to do this one thing. But I mean, a lot of the eco decisions which I make is stuff like bulk buying stuff, which may take some investment in the first place to buy that bulk buy thing, but then it means that then it lasts longer. So that's great. So it's worthwhile. And then when it comes to like thrifting and stuff, to me, that just like, oh my goodness, people just need to remove the stigma from that. Like, all my clothes are secondhand, all my kids' clothes are secondhand. And that to me is one of the most positive things that you can do if you do nothing else, because like, you've got to think about the life cycle of those clothes, and the fact that realistically we don't really have very many ways to recycle those fabrics yet. I mean, you can send it to a scrap merchant, but I don't know how easy it is to get those there. And like, so what do you actually do with your end of life products? Like, generally it ends up in landfill, and how depressing is that? Or we can think, well, hey, you know, that has so much more life left in it, and kids wreck clothes anyway. So come on, you know, buy some secondhand jeans for them, you know, and it costs you so much less money, and it shouldn't be seen as like, oh, that's what the kids do, can't afford. You know, these are what the intelligent people do. That is what, you know, this is what the people do who are not, you know, full of all designer crazy labels in their head. You know, it's just completely crazy to me that I mean, and I guess that's because of my upbringing. You know, I was always brought up, I don't know about you guys, like, oh, I want this thing which all the cool kids have. No, you can't have that. Have high tech. You know, kind of. It's a balance. It's a balance. But it's you know, I want my kids to not feel guilty about that at all, to not feel like that is a bad decision in any way. I want it to just be the norm. And that's kind of, I hope that, and that's what I'm excited about, is in this Instagram space, in this community alone, you know, more and more, I guess, normal, average people are talking about these things and thinking about, oh, how can I make my meal a bit greener? How can maybe I can do meatless Monday. Maybe I can, you know, and it's all about doing these little seed changes in your everyday life. And it does make a difference.
It does. It really does. Yeah, let's just bring the thrifting cool kids back. You know, let's make those the zeitgeist of where we need to be at. You know, I think.
Hey, I think I'm cool.
You are cool, Caleb. You are, man, for sure. And I think just even like what you represent, you know, you've had a lot of jokes about the idea of being a hippie and all this other stuff. And obviously we're of a certain age where that, you know, probably a negative thing to be thought about. But look at the forefront of where we are nowadays and all the knowledge that you have that people need to catch up on, you know. You've been really researching this, you've been on this for a while, and it is a learning curve. I think that making it mainstream will actually force people to kind of be like, oh, you don't know that? You don't know where to recycle? Oh, he's totally, you know, a charlatan in a sense. So like, I think that, you know, especially in Canada or I always bring up Japan because of how clean they are. These cultures have made it so that if you aren't recycling, if you aren't doing certain things, and you are kind of out of the loop and people just don't really understand why you're doing it. So it kind of puts the standard of what to do.
I mean, this is what's so frustrating is that almost every country has at least one green initiative, which is awesome. And you just wish that people would share them and things would people would know about them. I mean, I've heard that in Holland, for example, there's a place which will actually pick up your disposable nappies and recycle them separately, and that obviously requires a whole logistics chain of being able to pick up and process nappies so that they can be fully recycled and you can break down all the parts. You know, in Germany they charge you less for if you opt for a smaller landfill bin outside your house, then they charge you less council tax. You know, bits and bobs like that, and then you get benefits if you opt for a larger recycle bin. And it's just, these are the kind of things which governments could do. You know, in Scandinavia, you can take a bottle and you can use it towards your train fare. They actually encourage you, you know, and there's things, but it's all just grassroots things at the moment. And I'm just like, let's talk about this. And then there's all the old school thing. I mean, really interesting you brought up Japan, because there was someone I follow who's I can't remember her handle now, but she's all about plastic swaps and everything. But it's all just things like, you know, wrapping up presents using material. Why don't we do that? That is something which was done in Japanese and Chinese culture for hundreds of thousands of years. People would wrap stuff in silk scarves, and then, oh, you've got a silk scarf as well. How lovely, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Do you know what I mean? And it's just bring this stuff back. Bring the stuff back which actually works. Bring back patchwork quilts. Bring back patchworking stuff. If you got a hole in it, patch it, you know? I've got I inherited my grandma's sewing box and it's got all the zips cut out of old clothes. She wouldn't throw the zips away. And when we cleared out my grandma's house, and this might be taking it to the extreme, and she might have in the modern world be on an episode of Hoarders. But one of the most adorable things which came out of my grandma's house was they found a shoebox which was labelled "pieces of string too small to use." But I
Someone's
love
gonna
her so
use
much.
it. Someone, somewhere, they're gonna use it. Yeah.
I just love her. I
That's
love her
so
for
funny.
it.
Yeah. I
But
bet you
you know,
that
we
that
need
box
to
is
actually
still
take that back.
around too. What'd you say?
But this is interesting. I mean, the whole cultural aspect as well, of only being thrifty when you need to be thrifty, and it's about changing that as well. There was this story which really resonated with me, and I'll try and tell it in the quickest way possible. But my husband's uncle was an evacuee in World War II, and he was sent out to the countryside. And everyone had their own orchards. Everyone grew their own apples and their own pears and everything, because they weren't available because rationing. As soon as they lifted those rationing bans, he said, like, he told this whole story about how he saw one of his neighbors like standing in the queue for the supermarket, like to buy some pears, and he was like, you have a pear tree in your back garden. And he was like, no, but now we can buy it. Obviously I'm going back to the shop to buy it. And it's just like, that's the whole conscious consumerism piece. It's just like, but why are you? And it's a status thing. It's like, oh, the pear from the shop is more elitist than the pear from the tree in the back garden. And why that is, and you know, we need to actually get into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like he doesn't even recognize his own resources.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. It's funny the way you say that. Yeah, like, I mean, if everyone has a tree on the same, you know, wherever you are, and everyone can just start to do fruit swaps or the barter system, or just
I love that.
older traditions. That's just something to be thought about. But if no one knows you have the resource, then no one's they're gonna still go to the supermarket. They're gonna, and they can live right next to you, and you have a pear tree. You just wouldn't know, you know. So
I actually think, from my understanding, the US is better at that stuff, and you have more sort of cooperative arrangements than you do over here. Over here, it really frustrates me because we still have what we call allotments. I don't know if you call them allotments over there.
Yeah, explain. Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah.
So like allotments were basically created out of free land. Again, it was a wartime thing, so people could grow vegetables and grow food. And they still exist today, and we have one in the village. Generally speaking, if people have a smaller garden, they can rent a little, like, literally, you know, 10 foot of land or whatever to grow vegetables, to grow fruit on. But right now, it all gets caught up in legislation nonsense. So people don't sell their stuff off the allotment, or they don't give it to the village shop, because it's like, oh, well, we can't track that. We can't track that from, like, how do we know that no one's put dodgy chemicals in the grass? Or how do we know, you know, all that? Which I get, but I don't know. I'm just like, you see, like, these allotments with all these rows of, like, sweet corn or whatever, who's someone's lovingly, like, grown, and why can't the village shop sell that? There's something going wrong somewhere. I think that's something that needs to be worked on. But to my understanding, in the US, there isn't so much of that, and people sort of have cooperatives, and it's actually a really positive side of your culture, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as familiar with it in New York, but maybe Caleb may know a little better. For sure.
Yeah, definitely growing up more in the, I guess, rural parts of Illinois, and growing up with a lot of farmland and everything. We have a lot of, like, different markets, like outdoor markets, like farmers markets and stuff like that here. And actually, I know this week, as the weather gets nicer, I know that this week a lot of different local places around here, local cities, local towns are starting to do that. And what's great about a little market like that is that it is not, you know, your nationwide chain store where you get the plastic bags or anything. It's like you bring your bags, you bring your own reusable bags, and you get to pick through the different veggies and fruits. But what's great is that you have all these different people that are creating things. And I can't tell you all the different stuff that I bought at a market like this is absolutely amazing, because I've I've seen people selling different things that they've sewn, using a sewing kit, the sewing machine. I've seen, people will knit, and people will. I went to this one market, I think about 2 years ago now during the summer, and this lady was sitting in a chair. And what you could do is you could go up to her table and you could request something. She had like certain things that you could ask for her to knit, and she would knit it on the spot for you.
Wow.
And I was like, how neat is that, right? And it's that right there just shows like that community aspect and that enriching beauty of something small like that. And it also just kind of shows like being thrifty and being sustainable and eco-minded, eco-conscious, and being a conscious consumer. And it's really great to know that there are lots of local farmers around here that will grow potatoes and different veggies and different fruits and everything. And you can go buy it for a very reasonable price. You can put it in your own sustainable bag. Yeah, it's a very reasonable price. In fact, I can go and get potatoes. I can get 3 or 4 like little red potatoes for half of what it would cost me at the supermarket. And that's a great deal. And so I buy twice as much because it's such a good price. Again, that's here compared to the UK. Again, that's here compared to New York City, and taxes are different and everything. But it shows that in
what's possible
around the world. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what's so frustrating though is that it's so different from place to place to place. I think in the UK at the moment, frustratingly, a lot of these choices, and also the equivalent thing, I don't know if it's something you have over there, but there's lots of organic veg box schemes where they will deliver from farm to door kind of thing. But they're all premium. They're all top of the range premium. And they all use awesome packaging, compostable packaging. But it's a premium choice. We have the traditional markets, but they almost have like this stigma about them that it would be where you would go. I mean, I think the stigma is slowly going, but I mean, when I was a kid and we used to like walk through that market, those people used to scare me because they'd be like, I'm not even like embarrass myself by trying to impersonate them. Almost like an auctioneer banter, kind of like, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, like all yelling all in your face.
It's a bit forcing the world upon you.
I used to be terrified when I was a little girl and walking through
Recycle!
But then, you look at like traditional Italian or French or Spanish market, and they're more like what Caleb's talking about, in that it's local farmers who are selling beautiful produce and they're so proud of it. And like what you were talking about, the lady knitting something there and then, that reminds me of when I went to India, and like you could literally go in there with like a pair of trousers and go, can you make me a pair of trousers? And like within a couple of hours they would have modeled the trousers which you had given them. And there was like, these are things which we need to bring back. These are things, and it needs to be affordable to all.
I agree. I definitely feel. Oh, sorry, Tarik.
No, go ahead.
No, I definitely feel that a lot of the communities that have these types of markets, a lot of the communities that have these kind of implemented into their community and their system, I think you can definitely tell the differences from them to others, or maybe they're rich in different community-based emotions, reactions, friendships, stuff like that. I've been to Peru twice, and in Peru, lots of different cities and even the small towns of Peru, they have these markets like everywhere. I mean, they are everywhere. Any town you go to, they have a market. Any city you go to, they have a market. And it's just rich. And it's a hub, right? And what's so cool is that I actually learned of one place near Machu Picchu, actually in Peru, where the market was like the first thing. And then they built around it, right? They built the city around it. There's hotels, there are restaurants, there are other markets, there are maybe places to do whatever, whatever it may be. But there's all these different things here, and it's really important, right? And I feel that that kind of reminds me to what I have here, and kind of reminds me what you're talking about as well, Jill, of different places, different countries, different communities, and having these little markets that allow to be able to be sustainable and eco-conscious, and have local farmers, but also being able to have people come and use what they're good at, their interests, right? Someone knitting, someone sitting down and knitting something. Maybe it's a scarf, or someone sitting there and maybe a local musician and they're playing music. And it's the fact that even though they may not be getting a whole lot out of it, they're probably not getting paid or anything, but it's the fact that they're able to put their brand out there, right? The whole brand thing, full circle, and then also being able to simply just connect with the community. And that's the biggest thing.
I think the difficult thing about it all, though, is like a lot of this stuff for me is quite idealistic at this point, because it's just like the busyness of life. That's how supermarkets have become so big in the UK. If you went back to like what my grandma was doing, she'd go to like a specific greengrocer and ask her to make up like a box, and she'd go to a butcher's and a baker's and all that sort of thing. You jump forward to the 70s or the 80s, and supermarkets came about because of convenience. And now in the UK, a lot of people, myself included, want a home delivery, because again, it means you don't have to take your young children out with you and around the supermarket. Someone just literally delivers it to your door, and it's wonderful. So it's about trying to find a way through which is both eco and convenient, and I think we're not there yet. Without jumping into that premium wagon. But then I think things need to filter down from the top, and at the moment we're in the premium space. For example, I saw someone who was doing like recycled potato chips. I'm going to use your terminology so it makes sense to your audience. But they were doing, because like crisp bags are, they're a nightmare, they're never recyclable. So there's a company in the UK who's doing it, but they're charging £25 for like 25 bags of crisps. And like, meanwhile, in the supermarket, you're probably looking at 25p, like literally a fourth of that.
Those numbers are,
so it's just not affordable. Like, I love what they're doing, but like, we need to have governments and multinationals to get behind this stuff to actually reduce the price down, so that average people can buy it. So I guess that's really what I try and do with my brand, is like by featuring products which maybe at the moment I can't even afford, or I can't justify the cost of, but by making them more popular, then the wealthier people in society are going to buy them more and more and more, and then it will filter down. Because then it becomes more popular, the company gets more money, and hopefully they can reduce their prices, and then it can go down to the next level and the next level, and then it becomes something which everyone can afford, or that's my hope anyway. So
no, that's a great hope. I think sometimes, like you said, the idealism has to be funded from somewhere, and sometimes it's off the backs of those that are like, I'm just like you. I'm just an entrepreneur. I'm just starting out. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on, and I just love your product. But then you also overcharging them, so it kind of puts this world of like, how many people are going to walk through that door? How many people are going to actually congregate there? Obviously, the discounts that Caleb was talking about with what we call a farmers market in New York, which obviously I don't know who's farming in the concrete jungle nearby, but there are places and plots of land that they actually do farm at. I doubt if that's what they're selling for food, but regardless, what I loved about what you guys were talking about was the fact that artisans all over the world are still having their place in society. How many people are interested from our own demographic that are interested to become like an economical or socioeconomical entrepreneur? It's becoming a space where it's like not only like, you know what, I know mom and dad may not recycle or my peers don't. I'm going to go on this passion project. I'm going to get this done. That's very costly, very idealistic, and it's very hard to raise a family on that. So what we're opening up is the fact that like, hey, look, my family has a long tradition of, what apple trees, or we know how to knit, and we come from India. Our family comes from India, but we're, English now, or whatever it may be. Bring these cultures and these artisans into the forefront, making that mainstream instead of these much larger fast fashion or fast, groceries. I do think people are going to still continue to do it. During COVID, right in Harlem, we have a Whole Foods, and that place was frequented. I mean, there was lines around forever, mostly because they couldn't have too many people inside. It's a relatively large building, and every day I used to see just these lines walking around. And obviously, a Whole Foods has a big stake in a little company named Amazon or whatever, or the other way around. And obviously these much bigger organizations are moving in their best interest. It's not necessarily to make sure that each product is great. I don't know if you're familiar with Trader Joe's as well.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
They're a little more like grassroots, community based.
They're like bulk buy, aren't they? Like you can buy things bulk.
You definitely can. But what I'm highlighting is like, say if you have some sort of entrepreneur, and this is kind of the next question I wanted to ask. Some entrepreneur that just made their first organic cookies. Trader Joe's will offer them a space on their shelves for a short amount of time.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean it's through a processes to get yourself applied and whatever, but you're still in a much bigger chain. But in that bigger platform, you're an artisan, and it kind of reminded me of just the format that you're choosing. Best case scenario, your jars and everything actually becomes very, very mainstream, and it can kind of become, like you said, it could be something that may be this premium or idealistic thing. But on the lower level, what you're getting are full-on artisans that may not necessarily have access to that funding, marketing, or other things, in that much smaller bubble. So yeah, it's like almost like a digital farmers market in a sense, where you're getting getting information,
and
you're getting new products.
These massive companies like Amazon, which, their ethics are definitely questionable, but there's certain things which they're doing, which are awesome. Like, I think, I'm trying to remember the actual name of it, but I know that, I don't know if you follow Ian Somerhalder at all. He's like he's a actor who became famous through like all the vampire stuff, but he's actually a huge environmentalist.
Okay, I think I do know what you're talking about. Yeah, I think I do know what you're talking about.
And like he was promoting, and the Amazon have done like this green pledge thing. So you can actually sign up on the US site to like filter your searches on greener products. And a lot of the eco swaps which I'm making, things like buying bulk buy or buying like hand soap which foams, so you use less hand soap, and just simple things like that. I'm generally buying them on Amazon because end of the day I have Amazon Prime, and it turns up like the same day or the next day, and it's convenient. So it is clever, and there are things, and equally so, there's a reason why he's the richest person, or one of the richest people in the world, because I've also seen that he's now almost making an Etsy within Amazon for like these artisan sellers as well. So that's interesting, and making like the personalized products as well. I mean, places like Etsy, I don't know if you guys use Etsy, but it's awesome. I absolutely love.
Yeah,
it's pretty
phenomenal.
And that's done really, really well. And what I find so exciting about that is I'm literally potentially buying from someone who is literally got a cottage industry. They're making coasters, or they're making like hat decorations or something in their bedroom, or what. It's just so exciting to me that you can do that from anywhere. It connects everyone all around the world. I've bought from people all over the world.
Right.
Me as well.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's what I'm saying. It's like now it's not necessarily a physical place. Look at this conversation we're having right now across the pond.
Yeah.
Like look at where we are. So I do think that this is a much more digital space that we're entering into. My biggest question as we kind of come towards the end was, and we can kind of go into detail about this, but what have you noticed has been the ideal? I know this is a little obnoxious, but the ideal entrepreneur that you have accepted or promoted, or like what would you encourage someone that's just starting out, how they could get to a level to even be marketed by you, or even be on a shelf or in a farmer's market to that extent?
I always love to work with people who think about their product all the way through.
Okay.
Who think about their customer service, because I've worked in customer service for most of my working life, and
Wow.
so to me it really matters in one way or another. So it really matters about respecting people and respecting your customers as well. And that's kind of part of the ethics of a good company as well. So, and then thinking about what you're doing with your money. Are you investing some of what you're making back into like eco products, eco things, developing that further,
Okay.
and also like packaging and everything like that, just trying to do everything right, or trying to at least nod to doing everything right that you can, all the way through. I guess those are the companies I have the most respect for.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so true. Thoroughly looking at it, not cutting corners, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be expensive. I promoted a lady who I met through Instagram, who so she was a domestic cleaner, and she set up her own cleaning brand because she couldn't find stuff to clean with which was truly eco, and all the big brand eco stuff still had lots of chemicals in. So she's gone and made like literally cottage industry stuff out of like bicarbonate of soda and all your old school vinegar and like essential oils and stuff, and she's packaged it up so beautifully and she's made it affordable. And I hope that this is the way the world goes, is that these small producers, and as you rightly said, Tarik, is what's wonderful about the internet is it gives us an opportunity to let these cottage industries, these tiny little companies, just flourish. And I think that's really exciting.
Yes, yes, yeah. Shout out to that. Shout out to your company and everything that you're doing as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's not much more to be said, but let's get out there and do it. Let's find something you're great at and start to market it. That's kind of where I feel, and I'm truly inspired by this conversation. You have such joy and such passion about what you're doing that I'm sure it inspires everyone around you. So I'm so thankful to be able to talk to you, Jill, for sure.
Ditto to that. It's so lovely to connect with people like all across the world who care about the same stuff. I love it.
Yeah, and to all those guests out there that are listening, like you made a comment about make sure that our guests know what it is. But honestly, we have viewers from all over the world, and they're all looking at us, trying to figure out what they're going to do. And I think that's just kind of the space we're in right now. It is very trending. Originally the people that we brought on the show for this month were to celebrate just women's history and a bunch of other stuff, like Origin for March and stuff. But it's actually kind of evolved into just like back to where we started, which was entrepreneurship, following your passions and changing the world. And that sounds so daunting until you actually start doing it. You're like, oh, I've actually started to make a lot of significant differences. I mean, look at as obnoxious as that change was, but there's less plastic off of those fruits. So, those small changes like that matter for sure. And that's just you speaking up probably once because you were just being upset about something. But a conscious, calculated effort and the way that everything's moving will start to, demonetize some of the bigger things that have become larger industries. So, yeah, I'm happy to see people winning for sure.
Absolutely. I think it's really exciting. I think it's just about, as you say, this whole conscious consumerism piece of people actually just standing back and questioning stuff, not just blindly following the trends.
That's awesome. Yeah. Got it, Caleb?
Yep, I got it.
I
Yep.
didn't want to interrupt you that time.
No,
I
you're
can talk
good.
all day, man.
I'm
Perfect.
pulling up all the stuff that I need, but no, I definitely agree, and I think that was a great way to end the show here. And thank you, Jill, for coming on to the show. We really do appreciate it, and I'm honored to have been able to discover your identity, as I like to say, and to be able to learn everything that you were doing is just fascinating. And I knew it would be, but I'm very grateful to know more about it, and we would love to have you back on the show and to be able to talk more about everything that you were doing, and even things that say in the future you do then as well. So thank you again for coming on to the show.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And if anyone does want to collaborate, then I'm always interested to hear from you. Just I'm at Jamjar Jill on all the platforms. So just please drop me a line if you're interested.
Yeah, and that's the website as well, right? jamjarjill.com, right?
Correct.
And also these lovely pictures of your family make it just seem so organic. I love the site layout as well. No, I took a look at it. I was just like, wow, this is really built out. I mean, you're talking about Etsy, but if you just look at all the platforms that she has, just that alone shows that you mean business about what you're trying to get across. So I really appreciated that. I appreciate the layout. I appreciate that you brought yourself into it. It didn't seem like it was a prideful thing, like I'm saving the world and everyone jump on my cape. It's just like, listen, like this is what I'm doing. I'm sure that all of you can do it too.
You can do it too.
Why don't you join me? Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
everyone has the
that.
power to do something. Everyone has the power to do something, and every little change makes a difference.
It does. It's awesome. Is there any other projects you're working on besides this that are coming up, or anything else that you want to shout out or talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I am just about, I decided to launch as a virtual assistant this year as well. So also helping other ecopreneurs. I'd love to work with them, and startups and just businesses, inspirational entrepreneurs. So if anyone needs any business support as well,
so
drop me an email.
That's more like a consultancy that you're doing. So people reach out to you and you just assist them along the way. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I've just been learning so much over the last 10 years of blogging and building my own brand. So I was like, well, hopefully I can share that and help your brand too. So
yeah, for sure. And that's what we're here for. Take your experiences and share them with others. That's what the whole point of this is. Especially as a blog. And it's interesting that that's kind of where your start was. Pardon me, it's a little loud outside. Just how that kind of is where it started, with just an information-based space, and how you've leveraged that into making it into something so much larger. So I love that. I love that aspect of you kind of flipping what you know to help other people out. And ultimately, it kind of pulls them all back into the same network, because all those businesses that you've helped out with, they all will know each other through you. So then they can kind of do these groups. Yeah,
it's a beautiful web of a community of people all over the world.
Yes.
And it's just so lovely. Yeah.
Yes. And they all come back to you. all in your jars, and everything is
not
all
in a narcissistical way at all.
No, you're so humble sometimes. I honestly, you'd be surprised how much it means to be the glue or the networking hub for other people to make it. Like, it may not be you. I mean, your product may be just being that platform for someone else, like an Instagram or something like that. And in that Instagram, someone makes some larger, much bigger thing, whatever it may be. Like, we get rid of plastic altogether with some new invention or something. But that all came through making a step to say, look, I want to get this information out there, and I'm sure you're probably always daunted and surprised that, like, one day, Jill, you said something on your blog and it just changed my life. And I think that we've experienced it a lot as well. So it inspires us to keep pushing and keep going.
It's a beautiful thing. I think it's just like part of this whole community over competition thing. I think just be so proud of everyone who's doing their bit. And if you've managed to connect people with other people who had then gone on to build a product, which then builds into that whole thing, isn't that a beautiful thing? Just awesome.
Yes. The beautiful ecosystem, Caleb.
Yeah, absolutely. We are all trees.
I love that. It really is. It really is. And thanks again, Jill, for coming on to the show. It's been a great episode. I feel like I've learned so much, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. And as we try to wrap up there, I lost my Wi-Fi connection. So, but we're back on, and we're going to end it with a great strike.
We're here, man.
But once again, you have been listening and watching the Identity Podcast. Thanks as always for all of our listeners and viewers for listening and watching. Don't forget that you can like us on all social media platforms at the Identity Podcast, and go ahead and check out Find Your ID NYC, which we are presented by on Instagram and Facebook as well. Don't forget to check out the Identity Podcast on all streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you love the Identity Podcast and want to sponsor us, well, you can. Just email us at press@findyouridnyc.com to do so, and we will correspond with you on more details on that. But great stuff. Don't forget to listen to the Identity Podcast on Brick Media every Tuesday as we premiere a new episode. That partnership is absolutely amazing. We're so grateful for that. And don't forget to check out our friends, Reverend Ivy Rivera, for her Roots Revival Interfaith Church. She is absolutely amazing. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can check that out on all platforms. And they actually go live on TikTok and YouTube for that as well, which is pretty cool. But it's been great. It really has been, and we're so grateful for that. Don't forget to check out next week's show with Leslie Webb. We're very excited for that show. April 14th, every Wednesday at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, the Identity Podcast. We go live. We have a good time. We chat about identity, and we simply just continue to do our thing. Isn't that right, Tarik?
Yes, indeed. Moving right along. The summer is coming back. It's almost like we're almost hitting a year, Caleb. But thanks everyone that's been watching. Yeah, Caleb's like, I'm over it. No, I'm joking. But I think that this has been a long journey. It's been up and down. We've literally started this in the middle of a pandemic, and we've flipped that idea. And I think that we've taken the fallow ground and planted our seeds, and we'll see that these trees are growing into some significant changes in our community. So definitely don't forget to check out Jill's website, everyone, as we close out. Definitely reach out to her in any possible way. She seems like the most awesome person, very motherly, and will definitely just help you along your way, especially with the new virtual assistant business that she's working with. Probably giving her a call about, listen, I don't know how to even start this business. Do you know anyone that has a business like this? Shoot her a text, shoot her Instagram. But yeah, so
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Do the thing, Caleb.
Do the thing.
I know you missed it.
Once again, you have been watching and you've been listening to the Identity Podcast. Thanks as always for checking us out. Don't forget, every Wednesday at 7:15 p.m.